meeting, board meeting for this month, March. We have our first item on the agenda is the approval of the February 11th meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion or edits, anything? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do we have all three of us?
Yes.
All right, number 2, public comments. Do we have any requests from the public?
That is just one satisfied constituency.
Okay, all right, now it will be Aaron Dunn, the Director of Revenue for Employee Recognition. Mr. Dunn.
Good morning, Board Chair, Commissioners, Mr. Mayor. This agenda item is an appreciation of a few of our outstanding team members and in recognition of our steadfast readiness and response to the citizens that we serve here at Citrus Connection. The most recent example of our commitment to the citizens was a mass casualty evacuation on the 28th of last month. Some of you may have heard of this incident. At 6:38 that morning, a multi-vehicle accident occurred on Highway 17. One of the 6 vehicles involved in the crash was a fully loaded agro bus en route to work. Basically, your worst nightmare. You can imagine the carnage and confusion of more than 40 vehicles involved, with more than 40 individuals involved across 4 lanes of traffic. A swift, coordinated response was orchestrated by Citrus Connection staff across multiple departments. They transported, using an in-service transit bus, 10 victims and 2 EMTs to the Bartow Regional Hospital. It's important to recognize that this essential support to our citizens was made possible by the operations, dispatch, and supervisory staff's wherewithal, competence, and devotion to their fellow citizens. One need only look to the week prior on the 22nd of the same month to find another example of this commitment to the community's well-being. On that day, 2 of the community's daughters were reported missing, ages only 11 and 12. Kevin Ivan, is that correct, Kevin? All right. Kevin Ivan, a newly employed operator here at Citrus Connection. As you can see, we're still learning his name. Was able to identify and report the girls' whereabouts to authorities that same afternoon. His vigilance not only helped bring the 2 girls to safety, but his actions are representative of the stewardship and dependability expected from our public servants here at Citrus Connection. Truly, Mr. Ivan's actions represent the essence of the character of our agency. Mr. Ivan, could you please come up to the front here? On behalf of the district, we're going to award you with the Going the Extra Mile Award. Please stand just like your right here, the picture. That's good. I'll come up. Here's all we do is take out your left hand. Go to the right hand, shake hands, smile. Right hand, please. There we go. There we go. We're just going to hold hands, Kevin. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations.
I'm going to ask you to stay here for a little bit, and I'm going to invite, we have 2 visitors from the Lakeland Police Department, Christine and Kelly, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm on fire today. The floor is yours.
My name is Kelly Boone. I'm the sergeant with the Special Victims Unit at the Lakeland Police Department. This is Detective Christina Stewart. She's an investigator with our unit. And so we were notified by the patrol officers who had conducted their investigation about the 2 missing girls that afternoon. And generally when they contact us, there is a sense of exigency or urgency, and they had exhausted all their normal protocols and processes. So they contact us to help with the investigation. And considering the ages of the young girls, sun was going to be setting in a couple hours, and the proximity to the types of crimes that we may get in that particular area, we responded. And after we do our processes, the standard stuff, I asked Robin Tillett, she's our PIO, to push out what we call a social media blast to get the assistance of the public. We did that, and the tips start rolling in, as you can imagine, which is wonderful. When Kevin, I got a text message from Robin behind the scenes, hey, someone has to purge these sightings and tips, if you will, as you can imagine. And Kevin's tip seemed pretty spot on in that we had already had another tip that we saw, a citizen saw the 2 girls walking in by a school in the same direction he was headed. So we spoke on the phone, and the one thing I asked to help also ensure that he might have had the right people was, I said, hey, did one of the girls have have a specific shirt on.
Yeah.
And he said a Harry Potter shirt. And I said, that's it. And she was wearing a Harry Potter shirt. And ultimately we found them within minutes down in Bartow. The girls had sought some help from a parent down there during, I think it was a high school call. So, with our appreciation from the police department, we wanted to present you with this plaque. Kevin, Ivan, in recognition of the quick actions you took on February 22nd, 2022, to help locate 2 missing students in Lakeland. Your keen observations and willingness to report information helped bring these students home safely to their grateful families. Signed by Chief Garcia, March 9th, 2022. Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Great job, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. That completes my report.
Well, I think we always know how wonderful our operators are and all of our staff here at Citrus Connection, but just as a parent, so grateful that you're the eyes and ears of our community. We just really, really applaud that effort and the efforts too of where Bill is regarding that accident down in Fort Meade. Like that, you guys are quick thinking. You're such good community stewards and public stewards. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Board Chair, if I may,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson, please on your feet, sir. I want to introduce everybody to Mr. Robert Wilson. Come up front, please. Robert was actually put in for the Gem Award this month by his employees. What better compliment could you get, right? It is me that doesn't allow supervisors to get to go in the extra mile award because that's what supervisors do. Yeah. And this gentleman right here, Mr. Robert Wilson, I look up to a great deal. I've learned very much from him in the last 6 years that I've known him. Everything I just read about is a direct reflection of his leadership. He was instrumental in coordinating all the movements that I read about there, and also his character, literally his infectious enthusiasm becomes infused in those around him, me included. And it would not be without people like Mr. Wilson that we'd be able to do what we do each and every day. So can we all congratulate Mr. Wilson? I didn't do that, but I knew he's good. Thank you.
Well, and that too points to culture because it starts with our supervisors, and so that makes all the employees able to do what they can do. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We really appreciate it.
I'd just like to note as well that Mr. Wilson is directly responsible for the Citrus Connection taking over the home checks from Grady Judd's office. So prior to the last hurricane, where we had the mass damage, the Sheriff's Department handled that. And there was a recognition that we needed him to continue public safety. And Mr. Wilson said that he thought he could take a small team and handle the home checks. So that's something we've done for the last 6 or 7 years, Mr. Wilson, thanks to you. He took a radio, 5 drivers, and made it happen.
Thank you.
Great.
Can we do? I'm sorry. Sure. Really quick. I apologize. That's okay. Mr. Wilson.
I promise, I'll get it together today.
You're in the middle.
Oh, come on.
Well, thank God she did.
Thank you. God bless you, my brother.
I love these meetings.
I'm about to cry. I am not a crier, but that's a lot in one meeting. Can we spread all this goes out? Okay, moving on. All right. Thank you, Aaron. Now we're going to the audit presentation.
All right, so Daniel, you can make people cry with joy in an honest
You've got big shoes to follow.
I recognize.
That's why they skipped.
That's right.
So I'd like to introduce Daniel Anderson. He's our CPA from Loudon and Jenkins. They have been our auditors for approximately the last 5 years. We started off with Trey from the firm, who was promoted to the Savannah office. And Commissioner Santiago, just for a little bit of history, as you know, the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District is over 40 years old. However, we are truly entering our 6th year of being the countywide provider of transit with the merger with the county. And so to provide additional assurances to the existing Lakeland Area Mass Transit District taxpayers and for the county representatives, we wanted to make sure that we had new auditors coming in with a fresh set of eyes to provide assurances to the Lakeland taxpayers. And I believe, Chair, that we saw this in some of Commissioner Madden's comments from the Lakeland City Commission earlier this week, that she now understands that the money in Lakeland stays in Lakeland,
Right.
and that the money from the county stays within the county. And that's largely thanks to the work that this firm does here today. So I'm very excited for him to give the presentation. I'd also like to just keep kudos on David, although he's currently in his consultant role. We would not have this particular, I know that
He
the
does look
jacket.
really relaxed.
I thought I had the jacket going, it's good. This is David's final audit and a swan song to what he's done. So
Yes.
David, before we get started, just thank you, because this is a great presentation.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. That is definitely a very tough presentation to follow, so I apologize in advance for this one because it's much less exciting and thrilling, although it does reflect tremendously on the district as well. As Tom mentioned, my name is Daniel Anderson. I'm a director with Malden & Jenkins, and I have responsibility for the district's 2021 audit. You should have two documents in front of you. One would be the audited financial statements themselves. And then the second is a document our firm issues called the Auditor's Discussion and Analysis. And this contains our required communications to governance, as well as some additional information that we feel might be pertaining to you. My presentation this morning is really going to center around the Auditor's Discussion and Analysis document. I will skip through it, so I'll try my best to identify which page numbers I'm referring to. But again, to start, I do want to thank David. I've been working on the audit since the beginning, and developed a great relationship with David. Learned a lot from him. Really enjoyed working with him and his expertise. We will miss working with him, but we do appreciate everything that he's done. And I also want to shout out to Rhonda as well, because Rhonda is our primary point of contact with everything that we do in relation to the audit. She does a tremendous job getting us and our staff the information that we need in order to perform the audit in a timely and efficient manner. Quickly, a little bit of information about Malden & Jenkins. We are a large regional audit organization with 12 offices throughout the Southeast United States. Your audit was performed from our Bradenton, Florida office location. Our governmental niche is the firm's largest niche, serving 600 governmental entities throughout that footprint. This does include approximately 80 standalone business type entities, such as the district, and it also includes 12 standalone special districts that are transit agencies as well, including the South Florida Regional Transportation Authority and the Chattanooga Area Regional Transportation Authority. One thing that's not a standalone business type entity that we're a little excited about is we were just awarded the City of Atlanta audit, which includes Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. So we will now be auditing, Department of Transportation funding on the world's largest airport, which is certainly something very cool. And hopefully we can learn some information there that we can, shine on to some transportation grants that you're getting as well. Moving to page 4 of the document, and really, as David likes to point out every year when we start the audit, the reason why we perform our procedures is to provide an opinion on the fairness of the presentation of the financial statements. Page 4 really just summarizes what you'll find within that audit report. Ultimately, management is responsibility for the financial statements and the disclosures in the footnotes to the financial statements. Our responsibility is to design our audit procedures to develop comfort in providing an opinion on the fairness of those financial statements. We do perform those audit procedures in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards as well as government auditing standards. We are happy to report that we have issued an unmodified report, which is the highest form of assurance that we can render. So therefore, in our opinion, the financial statements that you have are free of material misstatement. Moving to page 5, in the back of the financial statements, there are 2 additional reports that we issue as well. One we refer to as the Yellow Book report, which is really a report on our tests of compliance with laws, rules, and regulations. This is a negative assurance report, so if we don't find something, it's really a kind of a bland report, and we are happy to report that we have no findings that we want to report to management or governance. Additionally, as part of the audit, certainly the district gets significant federal and state funding. We were required to perform a single audit on 4 major programs, 2 major federal programs, and 2 major state programs. We have issued our single audit report indicating that the district is in compliance with respect to those 4 major programs that we tested. So that's making sure that they're in compliance with the grant requirements, with the uniform guidance that's issued, with the Florida statutes for the state requirements, And then kind of as Tom mentioned, as part of that, we also like to look to make sure that the Lakeland dollars are staying in Lakeland and then the county dollars are being funneled to the county. So that's performed in accordance with those single audits that we have. Moving to page 6, and I'm really going to skip over page 6 quickly. These are the required communications that we have to governance. Ultimately, management is responsible for the accounting policies that they have in place, as well as their judgments and estimates in relation to the accounting information that they have. We performed our procedures to make sure that we're in agreement with those estimates that they have, and we are as part of our financial statements. We encountered no difficulties in working with management and performing the audit. We had no disagreements with management over the application of any significant accounting policies or procedures. At the conclusion of the audit, we obtained written representation from management over the information that they provided to us. Moving to page 8, there were no significant issues discussed with management in performing the audit. We're not aware of management's consultations with other accountants, or what we refer to as opinion shopping. There were no auditor adjustments, which is very, I would say, uncommon in the governmental entities that we have. So again, that's just kudos to David and Rhonda that we performed the audit without having to recommend any audit adjustments. And there were also no uncorrected misstatements where we proposed an adjustment and then management elected not to post that. So again, that's very good. Malton & Jenkins is independent with respect to the district, so we are able to perform your audit under the governmental auditing standards. And then lastly, we're not aware of any other documents or information that contain the audited financial statements. Really, pages 9 through the back of the document just talk about upcoming accounting pronouncements. So if you want to have some light reading, you can read over those 10 pages or so to learn about what GASB's got coming in the next several years. We've already started working with management, and then I've already had conversations with Kelly, just right here, discussing the GASB pronouncement on leases, which will take effect next year. We don't anticipate that has a significant impact on the district, but it is certainly we're going to work with them over the rest of this fiscal year to make sure that if there are any significant changes, the district has those implemented. I don't really want to talk much about the audited financial statements, but I do want to kind of point out one thing that has been a hot topic a little bit in some of the audits that we performed this season. And that's if you flip to page 12, one thing that you'll notice is if you look about 3/4 of the way down under the non-current liabilities, the net pension liability of the district decreased about $4.3 million. So I just like to point that out because most people will look at that and they say, wow, that's great. This is doing great. The main reason for that is obviously the district is part of the Florida retirement system. The system as a whole had a tremendous year in regards to their investment income. So the total pension liability of all participating governments went from $47 billion to $7 billion, strictly due to that investment income that they had. Now, built into that standard, what GASB did, not to sound like a GASB nerd, but what GASB did to kind of help that is if you look just a few lines down under the deferred inflows of resources, you'll see a significant increase related to pension of about $4 million. So what they've done is they've said, we realize that these net pension liabilities are a very long-term focused liability that you have. So certainly it's important, but it's nothing to make immediate decisions about. Also, we realize that it's going to be subject to certain years based on investment income and the investment return that it has. So what they've done is they said, yes, we had a tremendous year, but we're going to amortize that investment income specifically related to each government over a 5-year period. So that's why you see that significant deferred inflow increase. And that's ultimately just going to help smooth out what's actually going through your net position on an annual basis. So that's just the one thing that I wanted to point out. I know it might sound a little confusing, so I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any about that.
Mayor Max.
Good morning, Mr. Anderson, and it seems a little bit like Matrix when you say that. But the question that I have on page 19 of the first of the LMATD is that you have some complementary accounting and education, continuing ed classes in there. Are there some that you think would be in particular good for us as a district to attend? And if so, which?
So we provide quarterly continuing education. This used to be in person where we try and get all of our Florida clients to come to one location. And then when COVID hit, we said, you know what, we should probably do this more virtually, which we like the in-person interaction. However, doing it virtually really helps us reach many, many more people. You think the state of Florida, all of our clients coming to one location, it's a lot tougher for people to get to. So we do have quarterly topics that we do teach, and it varies really every quarter. So I'm not sure exactly off the top of my head what the next quarter topic was. I know recently we talked about the American Rescue Plan, which doesn't particularly relate to the district as much, but I know that all of the governments that you guys also are on boards for would drastically have an effect on that. So we send those invites out to all of our clients. So David and Rhonda should hopefully get an email saying, hey, here's what our next CP is, here's the topic. And at that point, they're more than welcome to pass it along and say, here's the topics. If you guys think it's something that would be beneficial, I wish I could go back in time and say, yeah, I really do think the American Rescue Plan stuff would be beneficial for you. But we're kind of past the one that we just did on that. So again, I'm not sure what the next one is, but I know that we try and mix it between compliance-related items, GASB update type items, and then a lot of operational type items as well for, what are some best practices that maybe we can be implementing within our governmental entities.
And this encouragement shouldn't necessarily be stated because I know the conscientiousness that exists, but continuing education in the fast-changing environments in which we live are so important, even in topic areas where you feel relatively confident because of nuggets of news that you just aren't necessarily aware of. And so a high encouragement to utilize that because that's a wonderful list of provision.
Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you mentioned about, upcoming GASB kind of changes or new nuances that will be coming about. You mentioned about leases. Do you see if there's anything else that we need to be concerned about as we approach those new changes?
So just in preliminary discussions with management, we don't feel that the leases are going to have a significant impact. That's for fiscal year 2022. For fiscal 2023, there's subscription-based IT arrangements, which is very similar to leases, but leases were kind of purposefully silent in relation to any subscription-based IT arrangements that you have to say, we're going to utilize your software for 5 years. Traditionally, that's just been recorded as an expense, but that's something that we might have an impact on the district saying, okay, now we're going to be showing that that's a right to use subscription-based IT arrangement that's actually going to go on your balance sheet. And then it's going to have an offsetting liability for it as well for the term of that agreement. So that'll be fiscal 2023,
Yes.
but those are the two. And again, we don't think leases will be significant, but the IT arrangements potentially might be. So hopefully by the time I'm here next year providing this presentation, we can say we've had these conversations with management. We already know what that impact's going to be. And we've already kind of implemented that before.
Thanks.
Good question. Thanks, Commissioner Walker. Commissioner St.
I'm just in awe that we have such a great report, and I just want to thank everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes in that position, there's some issues that are very concerning, but this is awesome for the whole organization, so thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you, sir. That was great.
Thank you guys very much.
Okay, moving on, we get a progress
We do need to
update for
accept
TDP
this.
with Julia Davis.
We do.
Sir, I apologize. We should have put this as a approval item. We formally
Oh.
accept the audit.
So sorry. We have a motion to approve the audit. Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Colleen, David, Rhonda. Thank you. Now we're on to Ms. Davis.
Well, good morning. I have a quick presentation, but an ask. So this is an update on your transit development plan, major update process. We have the timeline. We're here on this chart in March, but March and April are going to expand to encompass the 1 month time extension we got. This is where it's really going to happen. We are still trying to get our stakeholder interviews, and we're wrapping up the employer and employees, and we're still trying to schedule some public workshops. But for the most part, we have, I'll pause, I'll go to the chart that I want to show you. We have completed most of the employer interviews, the ones that are going to respond, we have completed. The employee surveys closed March 12th. We are in the process of interviewing the stakeholders. I'm trying to get City of Lakeland and City of Winter Haven. And I'm really hoping that the three of you from the city of Lakeland could stay here today a little longer and sit with me for 30 minutes and run through the stakeholder interview. That would help a lot if any of you could do that. Literally, we've completed the bus operator survey. We've completed the 4 discussion groups. Last week, we completed 3 in a row. We have the public involvement survey, phase 1, which ends March 12th. And we've completed 1 of the public workshops so far. I want to compliment everybody from the Citrus Connection staff. Everybody's worked really hard one way or another to help with this process. Folks doing marketing, folks doing, driving the buses and keeping the service going. But everybody has been very helpful on the tight schedule and taking care of that. Now back to the baseline data. The consultant has been collecting a lot of information about the system and the service area. Lots and lots of data, looking at previous reports and current conditions and comparing Citrus Connection to its peers around the country. And they have provided us with Tech Memo 1 a few weeks ago and Tech Memo 2 just last week. And we're about to have a staff committee of the Citrus Connection people, me, the FDOT people, and the consultant to review Tech Memo 2 and figure out where we are on the schedule and what we need to do next. The biggest thing we need are the stakeholder interviews, so I won't take too much of your time. The stakeholder interview covers questions about these sections. You know, what do you want to see for your vision for transit 5 years from now and 10 years from now, and how do we get there? And we still have the public survey. I have copies of this page for you, and this is a list of where we're going in the next few days. And if you want more information about that, let me know. Questions?
Thank you.
So, can
I will.
you will? Commissioner Walker, can you?
I can say a few minutes. As long as we're done, I gotta get to a place about 11 o'clock. I got room.
Okay. I promise we can be quick.
And Julia, I'm with staff after this, and so, but I just emailed I was expecting you to reach out to the staff at the city. That was my fault.
I did reach out to
Oh,
them.
okay. I just reiterated to them too, to see if there's a time that she can get on everybody's schedule
Okay.
at the city.
Your staff are working on it?
Well, I just emailed them, so
Okay.
hopefully
That
we'll
would
make
help.
that happen. Yeah.
That's called the bellows.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. That was what I was asking. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia.
Mhm.
All right, Kelly Pennington, yes ma'am. We are ready for your report.
Let's start with LMATD. Total revenues year-to-date, January 31st, total 5.7 million, or 143% of the year-to-date budget. Fare box revenues reflect 102,000, or an unfavorable 48% of the year-to-date budgeted revenues due to the decline in ridership and the related driver shortages due to COVID-19. Contract revenues totaled 45,000, or 100% of the year-to-date budgeted revenues for universal access passes. The ad valorem taxes totaled 5.2 million, or 93% of the total budget of 5.6 million. Only 95% of the taxes are budgeted by state law. Moving to expenses. Expenses through January 31st totaled 3.3 million, or 82% of the year-to-date budget. Salaries and benefits represent 65% of the budget. These expenses totaled 2.08 million, or 19% under budget, which left a 2.58 million favorable variance. Professional and technical services expense was 205,000, which is 22% over budget. However, these are annual fees that are paid. The majority of the fees pertain to Trapeze, MCSJ, our financial system, and software and radio user fee that we pay to Polk County. So it should balance back out. It was just paid for the year. Fuel expense totaled $172,000, which is 5% under budget. In January, we were paying approximately $2.5 per gallon for unleaded and $2.55 a gallon for diesel. That's going to go up. Yeah.
Let's not build like Keystone Pipeline.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
With the gas still going up and I see we're below the budget, what plans do you have when you get to the point that you're over your budget? I mean, is it,
We're going to have to look at other
you're gonna take from
areas.
Paul to pay Peter?
No Paul to pay Peter, but
Okay.
maybe materials or supplies or office expense, no more extra pens to pay for the fuel. But we'll have to internally sit down and review that, and then we'll definitely report that.
If I may,
Only if
Great
I
the procurement of fuel to avoid this kind of volatility is based on the hedge market or futures market. So our current agreement should protect us from this volatility. Your exposure is going to be in next fiscal year. So it should be good for this year.
So one of the things, Commissioner Santiago, that we as the utility committee for Lakeland Electric learn about is the hedging in the futures. And so it kind of locks us in conservative planning long-term, where, as David just said, the volatility isn't as impactful, but it will be later on. Is that what, that's what you're
Yes,
saying?
yes.
I believe we're, David, at 0.004 above the rack
Yes,
rate,
that's
the OPS
correct.
rack rate.
Yes.
So, and Commissioner Santiago, we are in a fuel consortium with Hart in Hillsborough, ESTA in Pinellas, Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, both the school boards. And thanks to Lisa Harris in the procurement department, we joined that consortium a few years ago, which has allowed us that stability. The Polk County Board of County Commissioners now purchases off that contract, as does the school board. And I believe the city of Lakeland explored it
Right.
and is still exploring it. So it's been very beneficial, and the larger we can make the consortium, the more stability.
I have a question actually too on driver shortage. I don't know if you want to address that at the end,
Yes, ma'am.
or after we do all the reports.
Yes, I plan on discussing that. in
Thank you.
executive.
Thanks. All right, Kelly, any other questions on LMATD? Is that wrapping up LMATD?
Sure. The only other part was that the favorable actual variance is $2.4 million, which is, we're at 33% of the fiscal year, and that's predominantly due to the influx of ad valorem income.
Any other questions on LMATD? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Polk County, the revenues totaled $3.4 million, over 100% of the year-to-date budget. The fair revenues totaled $14,000, or 36% of the year-to-date budget. The Polk County City contributions reflects a payment of $363,000 in the fiscal year budget, and the county funding reflects payment of $3.03 million for the budgeted grants match. We're also working on billing currently. The expenses for the period were $2.4 million, or 81% of the year-to-date budget. Salaries and wages totaled $1.2 million, or 76% of the year-to-date budget. Operating expenses totaled $771,000, or 87% of the year-to-date budget. And the Transitions Commute Solutions contract was year-to-date total of $482,000, or 83%, and it's currently under budget. Are there any questions for Polk County?
You can move on.
Okay. The Transportation Disadvantaged Program is next. We're currently at 58% of the fiscal year. The revenues are at $572,000, or 75% of the year-to-date budget. The TD Trust Fund grant drawdown reflects $522,000, or 76% of the grant. The county funding for the match totaled $49,000, or 64%. For expenses, the total expense was $666,000, or 87% of the year-to-date budget. Salaries, wages, and benefits totaled $494,000, or 86% of the year-to-date budget. And operating expenses totaled $172,000, or 90% of the year-to-date budget. As you can see from this, the revenues are less than the expenses by about $94,000. We believe this is due to a shortage of the drivers. And when we have to close routes, we can't bill for those routes. And then we have to pull the drivers off of the TD routes and move them to other routes. So we're going back to look at how these drivers were used to see if we need to allocate some of those expenses over to LMATD.
Questions for Kelly? Comments for Mr. Phillips?
Chair, you will have an interim TD report emailed to you each individually pursuant to the Sunshine Law within 2 weeks of today's date, once we have the answers to this particular question. We wanted to have them for today's meeting. There's no excuse, but we will get to the bottom of this and get it up.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, we have an action item on the agenda. For you, Kelly?
Yes. We recommend the board to approve an increase in the annual contracted not to exceed amount of the 2023 service rates for transit service provider, the transitions contract. We have expanded service, which has caused us to go over the contracted amount. We are still under budget, but that caused us to go to 1.6 million, which included a requested rate increase for the employee pay and for the fuel predominantly. Within the contract, it allowed up to a 6% request for increase. But we are still under budget. The budget for the year is 1.75 million. So we request to increase the contract amount.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Is this through links or is this?
This is
Explain
through,
this, please,
thank you. The history is always important. When we merged with the counties,
Right.
the county was contracting service through Links. And Links was giving the county a friends and family discount, up for friends and family discount. Links, as many of you know, has been in a financial crisis for a number of years. That's leading to a sales tax referenda that is going to be coming up. And Links was no longer able to extend that, and their cost per revenue hour, David, I believe at the time was about $160 an hour. Does that sound right? And so we went out to bid, and Transit Commuter Solutions was the only bidder at the time. Commissioner Santiago, this was because this was prior to the major investment that your commission took on the east side of the county, the $660,000, which was the largest expansion of transit on the east side of the county since the creation of Winter Haven Area Transit in the early 2000s. So thank you for that. Transitions has been able to handle that. I'm happy to announce that even with the 6% increase, they are still less than half of what Links would have been. So we're making good investments, and Mr. Dunn works closely with their organization, and they provide a quality service. And that'll be part of what I discussed with the chair after the meeting, and we'll be talking about larger with the board, how they play a key role moving forward. But they are good stewards. The complaints or commendations still come through our regional mobility call center and through Susan Alfano in our quality assurance line, and we're able to work with them very, very well.
Yes, Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And even with the recommended increase, we still believe in budget.
Yes.
And it'll still be less than half of a cost per revenue hour of what we would have paid Links. And I honestly, Commissioner, do not know what Links' current cost per revenue hour is. That 160 was quite some time ago.
All right, any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved.
Okay, great. Thank you.
State corridor projects, that's another item for approval.
Yes, ma'am. We recommend approval to accept additional funding under the FDOT Public Transportation Grant Agreement. This is an annual agreement. FDOT is allocated funding in the amount of $409,600 with $409,600 in local funds for a total of $819,200 in fiscal year 2022. This funding will allow the district to continue to provide travel options and reduce traffic congestion on State Route 37, or also known as South Florida Avenue.
Have a motion?
Motion approved.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, asset disposal.
Thank you. We recommend approval of the disposal of one service vehicle that surpassed its useful life. We have, yeah, yes, it's a LMATD vehicle over 10 years old and 159,000 miles.
Motion for approval.
So,
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or further questions? Yes, Commissioner, sorry, Mayor Moses.
Whatever. Thank you, Madam Chair. The links purchasing of vehicles still exists separately as we use vehicles. That hasn't been impacted negatively.
Correct.
Jay nodded.
There's been no degradation in the relationship since Joe left. Yeah. Although I probably should have lunch with Joe. But now that I said that.
Yes.
Let's just make sure. Other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Phillips.
Yes, Chair, thank you. My report today is a little bit of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's start. The first is I'm very excited to report and thank Marcia and her group at the Regional Mobility Call Center. Marcia informed me in our one-on-one this week that we are getting ready to launch our Trapeze TripSpark online ADA customer portal shortly. This is going to be a game changer for the ADA community in all of Polk County, especially for those large agencies. What this is going to allow our customers to do for the first time is rather than having to call 688-RIDE or 855 Polk Bus and speak to one of our fantastic call takers, they're going to be able to do that online themselves. And they'll be able to do that 24/7, 365. Book trips, cancel trips, change trips, modify trips, all within the ADA guidelines. So very exciting. So if you think of our users, our super users, like a Samantha Romano, who's in her early 30s, very computer savvy, and she uses the system a lot. This will allow her the ability to be able to book her own trips and do those sorts of things. Marcia and I were talking about the massive changes that come with any holiday and the dialysis centers and the need to change those dialysis appointments. And there are many caseworkers that work there. With the permission of the customer, those caseworkers could go ahead and rebook those trips as well. Or you think of a place like Noah's Landing, Noah's Ark, Noah's Crossing, that all have residents that are there. Those resident advisors, again, with the permission of our clients, are going to be able to book those trips, change those trips as well. So very excited about what that means. We did discuss, and I would like to just tell the board, that this portal is designed for ADA, and that's extremely exciting. It does not support, nor will we attempt to have it support, transportation disadvantage, which is solely for the state of Florida, as you know. So I just wanted to go over that. We are going to make sure that Aaron Killebrew's team is well versed in that when they go out and do their public outreach, whether it be Delicio or Millie Santiago or Neil Ward. The website will be very specific as to how this is going to be used, and we'll make sure that we educate the customers as so. Those dual enrollment customers, Commissioner Walker, the ones that have ADA and TD, they'll still be able to book their ADA trips using the portal. The reason that TD doesn't work, just to let you behind the curtain a little bit, is because every time we book an ADA trip, it's checking that 3/4 of a mile boundary to the north, south, east, and west. It's checking the times of service. It's making sure that we meet all of the federal requirements for the Americans with Disabilities Act, because the Americans with Disabilities Act is a civil rights legislation. We cannot violate. TD has a completely different set of rules that it's not checking against. So theoretically, someone could book a TD trip from Lakeland to Jacksonville using the online portal. We do trips, as we've talked about, we do trips all the time to the VA that is outside of our service area, outside of the county. Those will still be done by hand to make sure that we're allocating the resources correctly. So there may be a little bit of frustration, especially for those dual enrolled customers that have dual funding sources, but we'll make sure that they work with them, and we're very excited about what this means.
How many dual enrolled do we have customers, roughly, Marcia?
The majority of our dual enrolled customers are dialysis clients. So anytime we onboard a new client, we pre-screen them for transportation disadvantage because when fixed route is closed, they have no other resources to use because we will not run our general ADA service. So we dual enroll them for TD. So we probably have about 40 of those and maybe 20 more. It's probably about 60 customers. But some of the frustration will probably be those TD customers
Right.
because as people are on the bus talking about, they were able to book their trip because we commingle passengers, which means there'll be some ADA riders and some TD riders, and they're talking about booking their trips online. TD rider may also want to book the trip online. But we'll just have to explain that it's impossible for us to put boundary limits on TD because TD is all of Cook County. And open it up, it would mean we have to take the ADA polygons off. And so we'll have people going outside the ADA service as well.
Commissioner Walker?
Just speaking of,
Thank you, Marcia.
speaking of VA and trips to Haley's hospital facility, I was at a veterans meeting in Casino, and that question was raised about services provided by our system. And that kind of thing. I'm wondering, do we oftentimes go to those meetings to make sure that we give them the information about the services provided to our veterans?
Yes, sir.
And how often do we do that?
So with the elderly and disabled, it's been a lot harder just because they're at the vulnerable population. But Deloitte and Milvia, that is their primary job. So they do it as often as these organizations will let us come in. Haley and Neil, they do everything else. They do all the civic organizations for these clients for us. So yes, the travel training group are the ones that go to the high rises and into places like those and do the travel training and give information and those kind of things.
So if we have the updates and we make those and we have to
Yes, so between Dave and my team and then Marcia's group, she mails things out physically for those that aren't, doing things like online. So she does the paper things and then we do everything else.
I would just, this is kind of an augment beyond, but on the airlines now, you have a ADA symbol that you can click, which automatically, if they're making reservations, so people aren't aware of this, then automatically provide that as a service as part of the civil rights compliance to the gate without any additional charges, and that, which is kind of a neat thing to see. The TD only customers, will they not have advantage to the ADA side, have access to the ADA site on their phones? I mean, you can't, if you have a TD advantage only on our website, they'll still be able to see the ADA side.
No.
No.
So the way it's designed, there's only two funding sources put into the system.
Okay.
Our Winter Lakeland Area Mass Transit funding source and our Winter Haven Area Mass Transit source. So the Transportation Disadvantage has its own funding source. So their funding source is not put in the system. And a customer can attempt to enroll in the program, but they won't nothing come up. Yeah, so they could get their ID number, their password, log into the system, but a service will, a funding source will come up for them, so it'll limit their trip to be able to schedule. And even if a person with the ADA rider attempts to schedule a ride, they'll let them know that it does not meet the ADA polygon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Santiago?
When does this transition take place?
What was the question?
Timeline, when does it start?
When will it start?
Well, we're rolling it out with Southeastern University's Links program with their kids, not kids, I'm sorry. They're young adults, and doing a soft launch, and we're doing also one dialysis center to do a soft launch. Trying to work out any kinks and stuff that I need to do in terms of putting together an actual demonstration, frequently asked questions and things like that.
Good idea.
So we can get, next time we meet, we can get an update.
So we
Yeah,
have
I
that
can do a
next time.
presentation.
Okay, great.
And also, there are gonna be people in the meeting that really are not computer savvy, and never be computer savvy. It is what it is. So we'll always have, and always have
Yes.
someone
Yes,
with
Commissioner
help
Santiago, just
to help
as,
them out.
just as I'm very comfortable saying, the Citrus Connection will always accept cash.
And that will
As much
be,
as we push the phone, as much as we push the smart cards.
and that
And
will
phone
be
will be-
communicated to
Yes,
them.
ma'am.
Yes, we don't want them
Yes.
to
Yeah,
become afraid all of a sudden that they have to go online to do that.
yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Federal regulation, we can't. We have to provide all those resources.
Mhm.
Paper and otherwise, or we'll be in breach
Yes, ma'am.
of the legislation.
That's right.
Great
Uh,
questions, thank you.
Yes, the spring break is coming, and with spring break, I think summer, in the summer, I think interns. And I'd like to thank the chair and the board for continuing to support our internship program. And my hope is that it will be discussed at the upcoming board retreat so that we can come up with some type of formalized program. However, in the interim, we will continue to work with the workforce board. We always look forward to a robust number of interns that come with the workforce board. And we have typically budgeted for 3 interns at $10 an hour over the summer. And I discussed with the chair and with our finance team, and we're going to increase that to 5 over the summer. So we will have 5 interns. As you know, without making any promises, the conversion rate of those interns to eventually employees has been one of the great successes of the Citrus Connection. And this intern count does not count someone who is working currently with Mr. Dunn, who was born and raised here in Lakeland and is back, and she is in a part-time, a open part-time driver role. And she is here working with us as well. So we're excited about that.
Commissioner Walker.
Bring it back.
$10 an hour.
I know, but would that present a conflict with what we know, Career Source is doing, with summer jobs for youth, that kind of thing? They're raising $15. Yes.
They have bigger pots of money.
Yeah, I'm just making sure you know what we're up against. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah, and to that point, you know, some internship programs pay nothing.
right.
And so there's benefit for interns to be able to have exposure to those things. And I appreciate the funding side of reality of paying for college or whatever it is you might have to have. But I dropped off an intern this morning that's working for nothing at a job. But the experience that person's getting is great. If you could have the number of interns you really think you could effectively utilize in the summer, not have to go with that, and at least, then my next question would be, why aren't we asking for that?
Well, funny you should ask. They were gonna ask for that, aren't we?
It was something that, the formalization of an intern program and budgeting for that was something that we thought maybe bring out of the board.
We're gonna talk about it. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, Commissioner
Go
Walker.
back to Montgomery.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not trying to discount or have a negative kind of message about the hourly rate, but I just think maybe not 15, maybe 12. I just think because of what we find is happening, and sure, they're trying the experience they get and what they're going to have is being used as they move forward. But I just believe that particular amount is I think this could be raised, could be increased. And yes, I know that we've got our budget guidelines, those guidelines as well, just consideration.
Yes, sir. Yes, I think that there are strong considerations for moving to 15.
And I said 15.
I think that's part of our retreat
It
discussion
seems
too.
like it is brewing.
Yes. You've been heard very
Yes, sir.
well,
You've
and
been
we've
heard.
actually had a discussion yesterday about that too.
Everyone in this room is very happy that you are talking about that.
Yeah.
Commissioner Walker. The unspoken that I can address now is our driver shortage and our driver pay issue.
Mhm.
Moving our interns to $15 an hour, to me, is ethically problematic in that our driver trainee rate is not $15 an hour. Now, those driver trainees receive 100% paid PPO, 70% dependent care coverage, FRS, dental, vision. None of that puts rice and beans on the table. So dealing with the driver pay issue at the Citrus Connection, Commissioner Walker, and I'm very excited that we have something we would like to present to you next month, and that's what we're going to be meeting with the chair about. We recognize we need to do it in a budgetarily neutral way, and we have some thoughts on that. So that's something that we absolutely need to address. The Commissioner Lindsay were here, I know he'd be talking about the salary compression of the mid-level management. That really is problem 2 of the larger problem, which is the mass CDL driver shortage in the country. We see that here at the Citrus Connection. We've been understaffed for almost 2 years. As you know, 7.5% of those positions are due to the average of COVID driver call-offs, but the others are largely related to our pay issue, which Commissioner Santiago, I know you're living, eating, and breathing in the county with the trash shortages. We're competing for those same drivers, as is, we had a member from the school board drivers. We talked a few months ago about, I believe it's Sarasota, or some school district just changed their times mid-school year because they couldn't find drivers. So we need to address this issue and we recognize that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the employee engagement survey is complete. I know that you used nuggets before, and I know that you always feel there are nuggets of wisdom that are there. So Dr. Ross will be presenting the employee engagement survey at our April board meeting. It will not be part of the strategic planning session this year. It will be the main key feature of our next board meeting. I want to thank James for all the hard work that he does on that, and for Dr. Ross. I've seen the results. Participation was down significantly, which I believe says something that we'll talk about. However, I am happy to report that the results overall are extremely consistent with what we've seen in other years. So we'll have time to talk about that. There are no major red flags other than the participation rate dropping off, which we will discuss, but overall, the survey results look very strong, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about that at the next board meeting. Dr. Ross will be joining us via Zoom from California. The Squeeze did 158 trips this last weekend, so congratulations, Mr. Dunn. That continues to go well. And the Squeeze is really, truly being engaged by the community and adopted by the community. We're very excited about that. The feedback continues to be that a lot of folks would like to see the Squeeze go fare free. That as much as Erin and her team have made it accessible with the different types of payment methods, that there's a desire to see that free. So that's something that we can discuss in the future. And then I need not tell you the weather is starting to turn. So we will be coming to you with a plan to possibly bring back the lunch service on a pilot. Again, if lunch doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I believe strongly that the issue is either that people want to get their steps in, or the weather. So hopefully we can find that out one way or the other. We did discuss asset disposal, and this wasn't something that I had planned on discussing today, but just to alert the board. We have had a RV style bus, and when I mean RV, I mean large Freightliner bus that was purchased by the county that we did take 5 years ago as part of the merger, and it has had massive electrical problems. It was in service for a few years, but has not been. And we are looking at trying to dispose of that bus. The issue is that there is no way we are going to get that bus to meet its federal useful life when it comes to miles or years. Because years is not years of the bus, Chair, it is years in service. And so we would effectively have to pay the federal government back or deduct $75,000 off of our next bus. So we are going to try to work with the Congressman's office and see if we can get some type of exemption to talk about that bus, plead our case. So it's nothing that we're looking for board approval on, but if it did not count against our 20% spare ratio, this would not be an issue. We could turn it into a mobile office or do something creative with it, but it does count against our spare ratio. And as you can see from just the emergency preparedness, let alone a hurricane, when those hurricanes come, we put our entire fleet out on the street. And then when we have the elder points of the world, we put their vehicles into service as well. So it's something that we are looking at trying to remedy. And I believe this would be perfect for the Congressman to be able to help us with.
Does anybody have a van that wants a bus? Never mind.
Well, to that point, Madam Chair, the disposal that you could get for that, the trade-in for that, do you know what that number would be roughly? How many mountains?
Somewhere around like 5,000-6,000.
Oh, really? Oh, never
Dollars?
mind.
Bad shape.
And that's just for the catalytic converter.
That's $1,500.
And even if the bus is running, what we run into is it's not as desirable for plan or design. It's not safe
That's
for our
an issue.
rural roads.
Yeah.
It's just not the right.
Someone was glad we purchased it.
So
The county
to put
doesn't
money
even
into
provide
fixing
I know,
it
right?
is not.
Maybe you can pick up garbage.
Just
Throw the garbage bags in.
Final two items. I want to thank the mayor, the commissioners, and our chair for the favorable outcome at the city of Lakeland regarding the CRA funding. So thank you very much for that. Commissioner, as you may be aware, we granted our exemption moving forward with 3 CRAs. And I've reached out to Brian and Elise so that we can sit down and talk about how our two agencies partner moving forward. I think that there was a strong movement from Commissioner Madden and saw nodding heads at the dais that we find some way to formalize maybe some more presence at each of our board meetings, et cetera. So whether we send staff, I don't want to sign you up, Aaron, sorry, but one of your staff members or myself, and we formally ask to be on the CRA agenda. We put the CRA on our agenda quarterly or semi-annually. We'll figure out how we do that moving forward. Certainly, we value all of our partners at the city, and so we want to have that moving forward.
Commissioner Walker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's so important, we have conversation. To sit and talk and be able to share, situations that confront all of us and translate.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to make sure that we can have that, robust discussion, of making sure that we get what's need to be taken care of for all of us in the city and this district. Of course, that's what you want. That's what I think is important. Positive outcomes. And we are not all having our way. We know that. But certainly make sure that we can keep our thing as we shared on our meeting on Monday. The dollars that we get from our taxpayers are used for what the purpose is been guided.
Very much.
Yes, I would agree with that, and I think it's imperative. I thought Commissioner McLeod handled this well. It's a 1A, 1B, meaning both are really understandable and important decisions. This is a reflection of the confidence that I think the 3 Lakeland commissioners have for Citrus Connections overall management style and the great listening ears you provide. So we do not, and the preservation of options for needs that exist outside of the CRA area per se. If we felt there was some kind of tantamount need within the CRA that wasn't being addressed, I think we would work together to cause those things to occur. And so we feel badly because it's not an undermining of our confidence in our CRA or in the leadership by Elise Drumgo, who does a great job for us. It's just really, to Commissioner Walker's point, the expansion of the use of those funds to be within the LMATD district that help us bridge some needs we wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And so thank you for providing that fiscal responsibility and planning and routing that you have done. And then also at the same time, we are so grateful for what we see the CRA work to protect for options within our community. So both things are working well. This is a way that maximizes our options and minimizes the absence of service that we may need to do otherwise. And so we're grateful.
Yeah, and I think one of the great things about the Transit Authority now is the training for new board members as they come in, and I think Commissioner Santiago would say that. So really understanding how we work and how we operate is a testament to staff and our electeds who are interested and really take this seriously, that it's not a simple appointment, that we look at the budgets and that we are held to a higher standard to watch the public dollars. And I think that this is reflected in that way. I think historically, maybe sometimes as city commissioner or county commissioners, you get assigned to multiple things, and you really have to have a vested interest to sit at this table and really understand what's happening. There was a question by Commissioner Madden the other day about the money, whether it was staying in the Lakeland area or going out from the LMATD tax out to the county. And that was a great point. I'm glad she brought that up because that's something I would assume that my peers would know, but not necessarily true. So I think it was a healthy dialogue to explain the landscape of what we do here. And I think that needs to continue, that we need to constantly ask questions. I think questions are a good thing and push each other forward. And I hope that this can continue. And I also think that the CRA and the city of Lakeland and the Transit Authority do have a good working relationship with one another, and that just needs to continue. So it was not anything that it was negative toward the CRA. It's just understanding. And a big thing for our public to understand and our commissioners to understand is that we are confined by time and space and, the boundaries of the playing field. So we can't take TD money and apply it to ADA or ADA money to apply it to TD. The same thing holds true with the Lakeland area mass transit and applying it to other areas. I think it's a complicated issue to make people understand the buckets of money that we have to work within. And some of our even fellow commissioners don't necessarily, if they're not privy and they don't sit in this room, they don't understand. So I think that it's a really good dialogue and it's a really good way. I think we have great relationships throughout Polk County, with the municipalities, with the transit district and the services that are provided throughout. So I think that was a good example of how everything can work together for the benefit of all of our residents. So, and I appreciate both the mayor and Commissioner Walker speaking Monday very eloquently about what transit does. I think that really helped clear up some misconceptions.
And finally, well, actually, two things. The last two things are the fair share agreements. So we were auditing the fair share agreements, and the auditor just left, so our audit is clean. But I would like to point out that thanks to Kelly looking at it and Aaron's reviewing everything for an upcoming Winter Haven presentation, we recognize that Winter Haven's fair share was 19%, not 20%. So as you are aware,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
as you're aware, or maybe aware, Commissioner Santiago, the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District, prior to the merger with the county, had the Bartow Express route. Sheriff Judd was seeing that people were not showing up to court because they had no transportation. So he said, Bartow, you're going to do this, and LMATD, you're going to do this, and you're going to split the cost, and that happened. He said, "There you go." And so when we had the fair share agreements, David and his team were able to merge Bartow's portion of the Bartow Express into the Bartow fair share agreement. We did the same thing with Legoland because, as you may remember, Derek Yeacher, shortly before he left, agreed that the city of Winter Haven would pay for Sunday service for Legoland so that its employees could get to and from Legoland. That was prior to any fair share agreements. So Mike Herr adopted a fair share agreement that was moving up to 20%, and he adopted a Legoland agreement. Is that correct? Yes. We merged and did what we did with Bartow. In the agreement, Mr. Darby made sure that that was reflected. We didn't bring the math over completely. And so it turns out that their fair share has been 19, not 20%, because the Sunday calculation was not in. I communicated with Mr. Herr. They will be moving to their 20%. It'll move them from approximately 263,000, is that right, to about 290,000. And he's comfortable with that. And obviously, the books have been audited, the books have been closed, everything was paid, but ultimately they were at 19%, not 20%. So we've made that correction.
Nothing retroactive.
No, it's already been paid for, so the county subsidized Winter Haven at one additional percent. As the county also subsidized the routes on the east side of the county that were funded with the $660,000 until that funding ran out. So Winter Haven was not treated preferentially, but there were other precedents that were there. But this was a mistake. And then finally, I will be out of the country from the 20th to the 27th. I will have my phone with me, but Mr. Dunn will be in charge of this report.
I just have one thing to add. I don't know if my fellow commissioners may know this, but Citrus Connection stepped up to help with Night to Shine, which is the Tim Tebow Foundation prom that serves people with intellectual disabilities, and it has to be outside. We had COVID protocols. So First Presbyterian Church, who organized that, recruited golf carts. So Aaron and Jules, they both came and gave our drivers a little tutorial on how to drive in a parking lot, which I was one of the drivers, so we were all in safekeeping. And so we did loops in the evening, and it was the best time because we could seat more individuals, more prom participants and guests with their chaperones. And so it was a 3-hour event, 4 to 7 on Thursday, February 10th. It was great. I mean, we had a great time. It was a great turnout. Tons of people in Lakeland have golf carts, FYI. So we might need to revisit that at the commission level of street legal golf carts, because I got a lot of questions that evening about that. But I just want to thank Citrus Connection staff and the squeeze. It was really well done. I also promoted the squeeze a lot because we got to talk about using these carts downtown. So thank you for making that happen. That was a great community involvement event. So thank you.
That's in the notebook.
All right, seeing no further business, anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and looking at the ridership report, I see that, and I'm trying to expand it. It looks like we're moving in the right direction, except for we were lower in the Citrus Connection only. We're still under, of course, the due to the pandemic, but we are moving in the right direction. So do you do any calculations or any projections for the rest of the year, how you're gonna be with the ridership as far as this report is concerned?
Normally, the answer to that question is yes, we do. We watch it very closely as well. However, in the situation that we're in, we have to be a little bit more discerning about how we do that. What I'm trying to say is this: a lot of the ridership declines or increases are really due to our service interruptions. So we have certain routes right now that if you look at the report, that this route is getting worse and worse and worse. It's not running full capacity. It's getting cut more than other routes. I'm in the because every day I come in, and that's my night. However, to the district's credit, and I can say this with confidence, we don't do like other places. When we come here every day and we have to cut routes, we don't make those decisions based on money. I think that's important for me to point out, because a lot of places do. When they derive their, what I call priorities of work, or thresholds for making decisions about cutting routes based on money. If we cut this route, we go less. We don't do that here. What we do is we cut routes based on the priority of the citizens. We don't cut a hospital regardless of how low the ridership is, because it's a hospital. That makes sense. And then after that, after key areas, it goes, what is really close. That's a whole bunch of words, so it's really long, basically saying you, yes, we do. However, in the current environment, the numbers really are skewed, because what looks lower is really has a lot more to do with service interruptions than it does interaction with the community service.
So I'm thinking with this gasoline increase and the people probably parking their cars more and taking the bus, I'm wondering when will that happen? If it's gonna happen, when will that happen? And how that's really gonna mess up your.
I would imagine it'd be a direct correlation between that and price of gas.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's kind of historically what's going on. If you look about the industry wide, those two things go hand in hand. That's our prediction, and that's how we try to do things.
Okay.
But we don't have the same amount of chess pieces that we want to have.
Sure.
So we do the best we can for what we have.
Commissioner Santiago, I remember in 2008, I wasn't in the state of Florida at the time, but I was at Pace, and it took about 6 weeks for the middle, what I would call the middle class American in the Chicago suburbs, to start looking at Pace as options for how they could start to reduce just a commute to and from work. So that typically tends to be the trip that they look at first. So I think if we're going to see that, and again, I haven't been through it here in Polk County, but it would be the 12, the Lakeland to Winter Haven. It's going to be the 15. It's going to be the 22. It's going to be the city to city, the 17s. It's going to be those routes that connect the cities. I live in Lakeland. I work in Bartow. We know Bartow, I believe it triples during the hours of 8 to 5. Can I take the Bartow Express and leave my car at home?
Right.
Those should be the routes that we see burgeon with new middle-class people.
And the ones with colleges on them, that's the other thing.
Yeah. You're right.
And starting Monday, just FYI, starting Monday, Dave and I are starting to run advertisements for buses in correlation to gas prices.
That's good.
So we're
That was
starting-
my question.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great.
That's a good thing.
We're gonna
Good
start
marketing.
a thing.
Yeah.
And along with that, and along with that vein, I just got a text from Channel 8 asking about, are more people riding the bus? How much more does it cost to build buses? And are there concerns about the budget?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yes.
Yes, and yes. Call me if you need
So
anything.
are you already sending out this information? Is that what you're saying about it? Or is
No,
it
no,
gonna
so
come-
I have to do radio this week for Monday, so I'll do bid 4 for Monday, and then we'll add for social media calendars and those kind
And
of things.
that same ad is going to Teresa as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Use the system. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll adjourn this meeting at 9:46. Thank y'all. Or 9:49.